If you'd like to sit down, I'll see if Mr. Rose is at home. Could I have your name?
Wendy.
Just Wendy?
That's right.
I'm Mr. Rose's secretary.
Do you live here?
Yes.
Cosy, isn't it?
Yes.
Is he out then?
He's in the garden. I'll tell him you're here.
Thanks. He your fella?
No.
Oh, just wondered.
You know Mr. Rose?
Yeah, known him a long time. Must be 5 years.
Really?
We met in a club in Soho. I was a hostess there. You know, looking after the customers. The men customers.
Yes, I know.
You should have seen Charlie that first time. He never took his eyes off me.
Wendy. Wendy Lee.
She just said, just Wendy.
Oh, it must be her. How splendid. You know, I've been trying to get in touch with her for months. The last time I saw her was in Bath.
Where?
Bath in Somerset, where the buns come from.
You know it?
Oh, yes, it's a beautiful city.
It's a hole. Place for dining. Of course, he didn't tell anyone what he'd done with me. Most of my friends thought I was dead. It was all right when he was there himself, but how often was that?
How often was it?
The odd weekend.
I see.
Christmas. He always came for Christmas.
Oh, how lovely for you both, hanging up your stockings.
Wendy!
Charlie!
What a delightful surprise.
Hello, Charlie.
And as usual, you're looking quite ravishing.
Oh, it's all those late nights I've not been having.
Lights out at 9:30 every night.
At work by 8 in the morning.
Regular meals, plenty of exercise.
Not a drop to drink.
A healthy routine and a comfortable feeling of security. I wish I could spend some time in Holloway. Drusilla, I take it, has introduced herself.
Who?
Drusilla, my secretary.
Oh, is that your name?
Yes.
Get that.
Drusilla is very kindly taking down the story of my life for me.
Not that we've got very far with it yet.
Have you got as far as me yet?
You?
When I said my life, Wendy, I was not referring to my private life. Though that might make a good story one day.
Yes, I dare say it might.
Shall I take the young lady's things up to her rooms?
Things?
Her suitcase. It's in the hall.
Yeah, well, you see, I
Well,
thought...
I think the best thing to do, John, at the moment is to lay another place for lunch. I think after 3 months in Holloway...
6?
Miss Lee is more likely to be feeling hungry than sleepy at the moment.
Right.
Bye. He's rather pretty, isn't he?
Is he?
So that's where you've been, Holloway. I should have thought of that. Whiskey and ginger.
Oh, you remember then?
But of course. And dry sherry for you, Drusilla.
Please.
Has Wendy told you how we met?
At a nightclub, she says.
That's quite correct.
She says you couldn't take your eyes off her.
Well, I certainly did my best not to.
Thank you.
And if I remember correctly, I asked her if there was somewhere where we could go so that we could be alone together.
How original.
So that I could arrest her without causing too much of a stir amongst the clientele.
Arrest her?
We used to work some lovely little dodges in that place till he turned up.
And judging from your recent address, I presume you've been working them again.
Well, you know what Fred is.
Fred?
You've been seeing Fred Chater again. Her accomplice, Drusilla. In various confidence tricks too numerous and certainly too tedious to go into now, that they used to practice in that squalid little clip joint.
What do you mean squalid? It was nice.
I sent you to Bath, Wendy, to get you away from Fred in the mistaken hope that once out of temptation's
I
path...
went straight for 2 years.
Yes, you didn't have much chance in Bath.
Oh, you can say that again.
Thanks to the vigilance of my aunts. But once they died, it appears...
Your aunts?
Yes, hasn't Wendy explained? Addicted as I am to occasional acts of unrivaled generosity, I took it upon myself to find a job for Wendy when she came out of prison that first time.
I see.
A safe, respectable, comfortable job as maid to my aunts in Bath.
I thought we'd go on cruises and things.
Did they know? I mean...
Well, naturally, you didn't think I would deceive my aunts. They looked upon Wendy as an exciting challenge and Wasted labour though it appears to have been, they set out with zeal to reform her.
Miss Edwina used to make me go bicycling with her.
Bicycling? How old was she?
79.
And fit as a fiddle, till she died of a heart attack from doing gymnastics in the bath.
Yeah, I enjoyed the funeral.
And then you were left with Aunt Alice.
Well, Miss Alice tried it a different way.
Yes, she was always the more spiritual of the two.
Little lectures for the good of my soul and the holy picture on the wall to stop me thinking wicked thoughts in bed.
Aunt Alice, in her fashion, was very devoted to you, Wendy. She even remembered you in her will.
Yeah, you always said I wouldn't be forgotten when the time came, didn't you?
What did she leave you?
The holy picture.
A cherished heirloom, Wendy. It's been in the family for 100 years.
Cherished. You know what I got for it in the Portobello Road? £1.
Still, it shows how much she thought of you.
Yeah, it certainly did. Even old Ada did better than that.
Ada?
The cook.
The cow.
She was an old family retainer. She'd been with them for 40 years.
Alice left her £100. Big of her, wasn't it? All the rest went to him. Still, I must say it all looks very nice in here. The times I used to polish his table.
Luncheon is served.
On Miss Alice's plates and a silver.
Whatever it is you've come to see me about, Wendy, I suggest we leave it till this afternoon. I should hate to have anything ruin my lunch.
You think I'm after some of the pickings, don't you?
Picky.
Straight out of Holloway, nothing to live on. Why not see what I can touch old Charlie for? He's loaded these days, thanks to those 2 old aunts he used to make me slop out for.
If it isn't money you're after, Wendy, may I ask?
As you said, we don't want anything to spoil our lunch. I'm starving. Come on.
Strawberry jam.
We used to get it in for him specially.
But he detests strawberry jam.
No wonder it even turned up on the breakfast tray.
What else can you tell us about his formative years? This is an unusual experience for Drusilla and me.
I only visited my aunts very occasionally, John, even as a child, so I doubt if they're all that well-informed on my infant precocity.
They said he fancied himself as a conductor.
Wielding a baton instead of a truncheon.
I don't mean a musical conductor.
Not buses.
I found his little uniform once, you know, with a bell and things to punch tickets with. Looks such a pet in it, too.
You can hardly have seen me wearing it, Wendy.
I saw a picture of you in it. They used to show me all their snaps of him. Oh, I did so love the ones of you as a baby.
Drusilla, I wonder if you'd be so kind as to fetch me something from the study.
Yes, of course. What?
Perhaps you, John, would be good enough to help her find it.
Of course. Though I'm not sure it's there.
Well, at least we can have a good look for it, can't we?
What was that for?
The suspense, as they say, is killing me. What have you come to see me for, Wendy?
Just to show you something. A letter I got, addressed to me at Holloway. To await arrival, it says on the envelope. Gee. Well, it's not very nice, is it?
She can say what she likes, but of course she's here to touch him. What else?
Can we be sure it will stop at mere touching?
You know what I mean. What irritates me is that he was thinking of making her some sort of an allowance anyway.
How do you know that?
Well, his solicitors have been trying to find her for months. He told them he'd always felt very cross at the paltry bequests to his aunt's servants and wondered if the matter could be rectified.
How unlike him.
Oh, he does have some sense of justice.
Well, he grinds exceeding slow.
Of course, when she walked in, it never occurred to me that this was the Miss Lee referred to.
I wonder if he did fancy her a bit.
Oh, John.
Confess your sins, or you'll have no peace.
No piece underlined.
And spelt with 2 E's.
Oh, is that wrong?
Misspelt or not for a poison pen letter, it's hardly deadly.
Well, she always did have it in for me, the old cow.
Who?
Ada.
Mrs. Turl.
Well, it's her handwriting.
Yes, but hardly her spelling.
Well, the next one I got from her, she signed.
How many more have you had?
Oh, just the 2. She's living in Acton these days. This one's got her address on it. 14 Clarendon Terrace, London, W3. That's Acton, isn't it?
I'm surprised you know.
I'll tell you what you are, a murderess.
A what?
Murderess. See? And she signed it. Ada Turl.
Who on earth does she imagine that you could possibly have murdered?
Well, your Aunt Alice. Who else?
Do you remember when it was Mrs. Turl wrote to you?
Last June, to tell me about Aunt Alice's death. It was forwarded to me in Ankara.
Oh, What were you doing in Ankara?
Looking for a missing financier. By the time I got back, Aunt Alice had been dead 3 months, and Ada had returned to Yorkshire, from which she originally came.
Yorkshire? Well, then it's not very likely she'll be in Acton.
Oh, it's just possible. My solicitors were as unsuccessful at tracing her as they have been at tracing Wendy.
Oh, here's a letter from Wendy. What was that about?
Oh, I think grumbling at all the hard work she had to do for Aunt Alice, if I remember rightly.
Oh, here it is. Yours respectfully, Ada Turl. It does look the same handwriting as that letter Wendy received, doesn't it?
Yes, but Ada's spelling was impeccable.
What did your Aunt Alice die of?
Bronchial pneumonia, and an obstinate refusal, even for the sake of her health, to depart from the habits of a lifetime, no matter what her doctor and her reason told her. John! Ah, John, bring the car round, will you? We're going to Acton.
Acton?
To see Mrs. Pearl.
Hey! You don't have to do that. Look, Charlie. Look, it doesn't worry me what the old cow thinks.
It worries me.
I just don't like her writing letters about it, that's all.
I'll be ready to leave in 10 minutes.
Who? Me? Can't want me to go with you.
Well, it's you she's accusing.
Look, all you need to do is write to her. Priscilla or whatever her name is can type it out for you. You know, flannel her up a bit and make it look official. That will soon put the wind up for a stiff letter from you.
Mrs. Turl was with my aunts for 40 years. If she is suffering under some absurd delusion of this kind, I should like to put her mind at rest as soon as possible, for my sake. And hers.
You don't need me for that.
I certainly need you.
You're not taking me to see her.
You've nothing to be afraid of if your conscience is clear.
If my conscience is clear, like that, is it?
Like what?
You think there might be something in it, don't you?
Of course not.
Aunt Alice died from pneumonia, and there is a doctor's certificate to prove it.
Well, then, we're laughing, aren't we? I mean, if the old cow wants to think different, that's her lookout. She's welcome.
I want to know why she thinks different.
Because she's jealous.
Of you?
Yes, darling, me. Hard to take, is it?
Rather.
Look, her old man was killed in the First War, she told me, just a fortnight after they were wed. Well, they only had one night together, and that was a right old disaster anyway.
I cannot believe that Ada told you that.
Well, as good as. Only the one night in bed with him, I said, all sweet and sympathetic. You know what she did? Slapped my face, because she knew I'd lifted up a bit. Well, it's obvious, isn't it? Spite, that's what it is. I mean, if she really thought I'd poisoned Miss Alice, what she want to eat till now?
Poison.
Well, that's how she thinks I did it, I suppose.
Why do you suppose?
Well, what you looking at me like that for? Hey, you don't think I did it too, do you? That's all it needs.
For what?
Well, look, you know what happened that night, don't you? I mean, someone must have told you, surely. She wanted the window open and I said she couldn't have it. Well, she got pneumonia, hadn't she? We'd had the doctor to her only half an hour before. Well, how was I to know she'd open the flaming window herself as soon as I tucked her out?
Opened it herself?
Rain came in on her all night, they reckon. Doctor said she hadn't a chance in her state of health. Look, if she died from an overdose of pills, the doctor would have died...
An overdose of pills.
Oh, what the hell?
Do you realize the significance of what you've just told me? Listen to me. Are you telling me that, after all, there may be some element of truth in these allegations of Ada?
Oh, for crying out loud.
Oh, well, we'll soon find out. Go and get your coat.
She was old, wasn't she? With pneumonia. Well, I mean, she got one foot in the grave already. I only sort of, well, helped to put the other one in. So what? It was your idea.
It was
You know as well as I do. I only did it because you asked me to.
What do you mean? Poison? By Wendy?
With sleeping pills. And she's pretending that Mr. Rose asked her to do it. It's not funny.
This puts you and me in rather a strange position, doesn't it? Accessories after the fact, do you think? Living on his ill-gotten gains.
Oh, be serious.
I am.
I know it's ridiculous to think that he was in any way involved.
Oh, ridiculous? I don't see why.
Of course you do, but what you don't see is that that little tramp is going to stop at nothing. Once she gets into court, she really will try to drag him into it.
And if he's got any sense, he won't take her to court.
But he must if she murdered his aunt. Of course he must.
Really? Yes, how extremely interesting. Oh, of course, Doctor. I thought no less. It was only a fanciful notion that came into my head when I recalled my aunt's addiction to sedatives. As I felt sure you would. Oh, in excellent health, thank you. And you? I'm so glad. Well, goodbye, Dr. Richards, and thank you again. That was my late aunt's doctor. I thought I ought to telephone him to make quite sure that he could not have been mistaken about my aunt's death. And as I expected, he assures me he was not.
Well, naturally. I mean, he's not going to admit...
I am quite sure that Aunt Alice died from natural causes.
Well, why should Wendy say she murdered her then?
Now, that is what we've got to find out.
And she's not the only one who says it. What about those letters from Mrs. Turl?
Yes, I think perhaps we'd better get in touch with Ada before this nonsense spreads any further. Take a letter, Drusilla.
What are you going to say to her?
My dear Mrs. Turl, for a start.
Oh, wait a minute.
My dear Mrs. Turl, Wendy Lee has passed me the enclosed letters which she claims that she received from you. I understand and believe that they are forgeries.
What?
Because you are not the sort of person to speak ill of anyone. However, if you do genuinely believe what these letters say, I still feel that you would not be rash enough to send them.
What are you trying to do?
John, you must know that to send letters like this can only land you in very grave trouble indeed, unless you are quite sure, underlined, I think, that the charges can be fully substantiated in a court of law. So I propose to burn them. I propose to burn them. Unless you inform my chauffeur who is bringing them to you that you did indeed write them, in that case I shall contact the police immediately.
Well, you'll have to do that anyway, won't you, whether she wrote the letters or not?
New paragraph. In any case, I'm very grateful to the writer of these letters that they supplied your new address, as my solicitors have been trying to get in touch with you for some time. I've always been troubled that my aunts left so little provision for you after their deaths, and I'm anxious to put this right as soon as possible. I shall now be able to get in touch with you over this. Yours very sincerely, Charles Rose. That, I think, covers the main points.
Fully.
A big stick behind her and a nice juicy carrot in front. Can't fail.
Make her read it in your presence, John, and wait for an answer.
If she's not at home?
Wait until she is. I'm going to have a talk with Wendy.
She's washing her hair. And now, I presume, she's going to have a brainwash as well.
You can't really think he means to hush it all up, can you?
What do you think?
Well, there's only one explanation. He got onto his aunt's doctor in Bath just now, who obviously convinced him that she did die from pneumonia. So if Wendy and this Ada Turl woman are going around saying a lot of silly things that can't possibly be true, well, then it's only natural that he should want to...
Shut their mouths.
Oh, bother.
They don't even give you shampoo in Holloway unless you buy it yourself at the canteen. And who can afford to do that?
There's little point in having beautiful hair with so few men to admire it, which is why I'm surprised you're bothering.
Meaning?
That if what you said downstairs is true, you will be back in Holloway the day after tomorrow at the latest.
Well, do you think so?
I have just telephoned Dr. Richards in Bath, and he assures me that Aunt Alice died from natural causes.
Oh, lucky for us.
If you really did give my aunt an overdose of sleeping pills, may I ask how many it was?
Oh, 8 or 9, I can't really remember. All that was left in the bottle.
What about the empty bottle?
Well, the only slip I made was leaving the empty bottle in the bedroom the next morning. That's what Ada must have spotted, I reckon. You know, all these pills there last night and I left this morning.
Did she realize there were 8 or 9 pills in that bottle the previous night?
Well, she ought to have done. I mean, she'd asked Dr. Richards when he called to leave us some more. But, I mean, I told her that she still had a whole week's supply left. So, if after all this time she just remembered that the bottle was empty the next morning, well, I'm only guessing. Hey, have you decided what you're going to do about her yet? She might start sending letters to the law next.
And if she does?
Well, it's rough on you, isn't it?
I'm not afraid of anything that Mrs. Turl may say, or anything that you may, Wendy. Nobody's going to believe for a moment that I was involved.
What, with all you got out of it? Hey, you don't think Drusilla's got a hairdryer, do you?
No, I think I should tell you. that I was in my fashion devoted to Aunt Alice.
Oh, big deal. Used to come down at least twice a year.
Yeah, well, regrettably, my job left me very little time.
Well, you'd still be doing your job if it hadn't been for me, wouldn't you?
You know, the one thing I can't understand is, or believe, that you murdered Aunt Alice for my sake.
Well, it's hard to believe I did it for mine. What did I get out the old girl's death? A holy picture?
Evidently, you were expecting to get a great deal more.
Yeah, well, you told me I could, didn't you?
Yes, well, I was mistaken. I really did believe at the time.
Come off it. You just told me I had expectations, as you put it, to stop me going back to Fred Chater.
I was concerned for your welfare, Wendy.
You were concerned about doing Alice a big favour. You knew if I took off back to Fred, you wouldn't find another little slave like me in a hurry. So you had to think of something to keep me there. Answering those blooming bells. Not that I'd come up with any of that in court, mind.
Naturally.
All I'd say in court was what I counted on from you. For getting rid of Alice, like you asked me to.
You tell that lie.
Yeah, if I had to. So you'd better do something about the old cow-aider for your own sake.
Well, I've already taken your advice. I've written her a letter. John is on his way to deliver it.
Well, that's a load off me mind anyway.
With instructions to hand it to Mrs. Turl in person at that address at Acton.
Well, that ought to do it then.
You're not disconcerted to find that I didn't just put it in the post to her.
Why? Sooner we have her sewn up, the better.
You mean that?
Of course.
Are you telling the truth?
What would I want to lie for?
Mrs. Turl?
Oh?
Mrs. Ada Turl?
Oh?
This is 14 Clarendon Terrace, isn't it?
What?
And you are Mrs.
What do you want to know for?
I am the bearer of good news to Mrs. Turl.
You selling something?
No.
Giving things away? Where's your van, then?
I have a letter for Mrs. Turl.
No one of that name here.
Are you sure?
I ought to know. Have you tried next door? A lot of darkies next door. Could be one of them.
I doubt that.
Oh, we'll try the pub on the corner, then. Ted might know, seems to know most things.
But the pub won't be open till,
I can't help you, mister.
You're quite certain there's no...
Listen. Who lives here, you or me?
I doubted the authenticity of those letters as soon as I saw them. Mrs. Turl is not that kind of person, but as her name apparently was at the bottom of one of them...
And as the handwriting apparently was hers...
Though not the style nor the spelling...
Oh, I forgot the spelling.
I felt obliged to check. How many legs is a green fly?
8.
6. And I felt absolutely certain that when John presented the letters to her, she'd make it very plain they weren't hers.
Well, you certainly made it plain you expect her to.
So the question is...
The question is, what do the letters matter anyway now?
A great deal. If Ada didn't write them, who did?
You'd get a bit of a shock if she did say she wrote them, wouldn't you?
I'd get a bit of a shock if she was even there to say it.
Yorkshire, you say?
Elderly. Getting on with 70.
And come here quite recent.
I was told she lived at number 14 down the road.
That's Mrs. Robbins lives there.
How long has she been there?
Mrs. Robbins?
About 500 years, mate. Here, Ted, give us a quick pint, will you? I've got a thirst.
Sight of ours. You know the Lord as well as I do, if not better.
So what does that mean?
All right, I never said it.
Oh, you said it. He heard you. Didn't you hear him say it?
Yeah.
All right, it was a joke.
Ah, so we're all laughing.
About Mrs. Robbins.
What about her?
Do you know her?
Yeah, well, I ought to. I'm one of her lodgers.
But number 14.
Yeah, well.
He's looking for someone called what?
Well, Mrs. Turl, but as Mrs. Robbins is about the same age, I just wondered if, There's nobody called Turl lives there, is there?
No, I'm sorry, man. I've never heard of her. Come on.
Come back in half an hour, Fred. Get served like anyone else.
Did you say Fred?
Fred Chater. Why?
Fred, so it's his address. Yes, I suspected something of the sort. Good, well, we are at last making progress. Right.
Fred, her boyfriend?
And since she knew that I'd sent John there in person, she must have known that we'd find out. Or he did, which is equally interesting.
I'm not following.
Do you think it's just possible? He saw the car, saw John, guessed who he was, and decided to introduce himself. Yes. improving your mind?
Nothing else needs improving, does it?
Holloway Library.
Shocked that I kept it.
Not at all. You'll soon have a chance to return it.
Now what?
How long did it take Fred to run you to earth in Bath?
Couple of months, not more.
Did he ever post a letter for Mrs. Turl?
What?
Or in any other way obtain a sample of her handwriting so that he could copy or rather trace the words necessary to write those letters to you?
You mean Fred sent them?
Fred, not Mrs. Turl, lives at that address in Acton.
Well, get that.
Are you telling me that you didn't even know?
Oh, of course I didn't know. So that's where he's hid himself, is it? But, hey, what would Fred want to... The lousy, rotten bastard.
I take it you've had a difference of opinion lately.
Just because I went with that mate of his, Pete Bickley. Hey, you don't think it was Fred that shot me for that last job, do you?
I foolishly thought that it was Fred you were on the last job with.
So now he's in Acton, is he?
How did Fred know that you'd murdered Aunt Alice?
Well, I told him.
That's very unwise.
Well, when I heard about the will and found I'd done it all for nothing, I was that wild I just blurted it out to him. But who'd have thought just because I went with Pete? Hey.
Oh, I do wish you'd stop saying hey.
Well, suppose he starts sending letters like that to the law.
An old lag like Fred.
Well, he wouldn't have to mention his name.
What exactly does Fred know?
Oh, everything. And I mean, if he tells the police to get in touch with Ada...
Well, there's no reason to believe that Ada knows anything about it now.
But she saw the empty bottle that morning. She knew there were all those pills in it the night before. I mean, maybe she's forgotten, but I mean, once the police start jogging
I'm
the memory...
sure there is no cause for alarm.
Well, suppose they come and ask you how your aunt died. What are you going to tell them?
I shall be the soul of discretion, I promise you.
And Lady Priscilla, will she? Will you keep quiet about me, too? If the police come and ask you questions.
Yes, well, you do have a point there. It really would be very hard on Drusilla to put her into a position of that kind.
Well, one word from Fred to the police would be enough.
I really do think that we shall have to do something to prevent it.
Why? I can't understand why you don't call the police yourself.
Are you crazy? If I go down, I take him with me. He asked me to do it. He put me up to it. He told me to do it.
I know you wouldn't hesitate to say so.
Oh, you bet I wouldn't.
But Mr. Rose is not afraid of your threats, are you?
Well, it might cause one or two ripples in the club, to put it mildly. Do you know how much Fred would want?
I don't know. A lot?
I imagine.
Well, you can afford it with what you've got, can't you?
Are you saying that Mr. Rose should pay this man money to keep his mouth shut?
Oh, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you might have to.
It's unthinkable.
Oh, it's happening all over, darling. You'd be surprised.
I really think, Drusilla, that a lot of unpleasantness might be saved if I could think up a way to square Fred. Morning, Landau.
Morning.
He's on his way over.
Oh, don't you want a drink while we're waiting?
I can't help feeling, Drusilla, that there's something on your mind. Our conversation in the car coming over could have been written on the back of a small postcard. Indeed, your contribution could have been written on the stamp.
You know very well what is on my mind.
You disapprove of my trying to square Fred. Well, you really must understand, Drusilla, that I can sometimes be the weakest of mortals.
You are condoning a murder.
We haven't all your strength of character, Drusilla.
Well, I thought you had.
Everyone knows that I would never have been able to embark upon retirement at an age early enough to enjoy it, had it not been for my aunt's death. So if it comes out that Aunt Alice was murdered by a girl that I, myself, installed in the house...
Who swears she did it on your instructions. Yes, I know there would be one or two ripples at the club, wouldn't there?
There'd be a tidal wave.
And you're really afraid of it?
I'm extremely attached to my club.
Anyone would think that you...
What?
He's taking his time, isn't he?
Drusilla, it surely cannot be that when you heard Wendy pretending that she'd murdered Aunt Alice on orders from me that you, I can hardly bring myself to say it, that you believed her.
Well, the way you're acting now...
Drusilla, you shock me. You shatter me.
And you shatter me. That little trollop walks into your house and says that she murdered your aunt. And instead of going straight to the police...
Drusilla, I really am hurt. to find that you think I'm such a disappointment to you. But I do beg of you to go along with me for just a little while.
Well?
Let me introduce my secretary, Miss Lamb. Fred Chater, Drusilla. What do you have?
You'll have a beer. Anything for you, sir?
No, nothing for me, thank you, landlord. I don't feel like a drink this morning. Would you be so kind as to fetch Mr. Chater's glass of beer?
Thank you.
Well then, what's all this about then?
That is the very question I mean to ask you. What is all this about, then?
Well, it's hard to say what it's about exactly. It's a bit sexy in parts, though.
Fancy that. For a girl with your statistics, you do an awful lot of reading.
I'm good at reading. I learned how to do it.
Did you?
At school.
Clever girl.
Brilliant.
I know pornography can be very educational at times, but don't you know it's unhealthy to take your pleasures vicariously?
Take them where?
At second hand from the printed page.
No.
It's no substitute for the real thing.
Well, you haven't read this.
I still think you'd do better to come and help me with the housework.
Catch me.
We could make the beds
The bed.
or something.
Cheeky.
Yes.
All right. We'll make the beds if you like.
Good.
But that's all we will make.
Have me charged? With what, for instance?
Forgery of Ada Turl's signature, if nothing else.
You can't prove that I wrote those letters.
You even put your own address on one of them.
Now, would I do that if I really wrote them?
If you wanted us to find you,
So that you could put the law on me?
so that I could persuade you not to put the law on Wendy, I'm prepared to pay, Chater. Would you say 500 would cover it?
What if I were to say yes?
I hope, then, that that would be the end of the matter.
But it would also be telling you that I wrote those letters now. How do I know that you won't put the law on me?
With my check in your possession, you would have more on me than I should have on you. Especially if I gave you a note explaining what the check was for.
A note?
Drusilla, have you a pen and paper in your handbag?
What's all this about?
Then perhaps you'd better go and fetch the car so that you need not witness these deplorable proceedings. Now then, would you be so kind as to write a note for me to sign while I make out the check?
Well, me write it?
You write it, I sign.
Well, what do you want me to write?
As a token of thanks. Go on. As a token of thanks for the peace of mind that you have given me, promising to say nothing about the murder of Miss Alice Rose.
Wait a minute. Look here, you know, you're not going to sign this. I mean, why should you? I never asked you to.
May I? Excellent. 10 out of 10.
For what?
Spelling. Now, I think we'd better go. It takes a good hour to drive from here, even with Drusilla at the wheel. Are you ready?
Oh, no.
Considering what friends you and Wendy once were, I think I ought to effect a reconciliation.
Look, mate, you're not going to take me to see her because I'm through with that doc. Look, would I have written those letters to her?
So, you did write the letters then?
All right, then. What if I did?
What a liar you are, Fred Chater. It's not your spelling that leaves so much to be desired. Those letters were written by Wendy.
Well, that's one bed we've made.
And this is the way I thank you.
Told you nothing doing.
Right. Tell me something else.
What?
Did you write those letters yourself?
Me? What would I want to write letters to myself for? Letters like that, especially.
So that you could con him into thinking you murdered his aunt?
Oh. Don't you think I did then?
Then to bleed him of all you could get by threatening to implicate him. That's nice.
What is?
The perfume. Drusilla's.
She left it around. I just thought I'd try it.
Though I'm not too sure it's really you. If there is a real you.
Sorry. I still find my book a lot more exciting.
When did you get a letter from Mrs. Turl, anyway?
Letter?
That you could trace her handwriting from? Did she write to you in Bath, from the kitchen to the scullery?
I didn't get any letter from Ada. They came from Fred, Mr. Rose says.
What I don't understand is how you and Fred ever imagined this scheme of yours would work.
There isn't any scheme.
You must have expected Mr. Rose to go straight to the police and call your bluff. Did you have something else up your sleeve if he did? If so, what?
We didn't have nothing up our sleeve.
No, I didn't think you did. So there must be some other explanation for
You
it.
talk too much. Perhaps it is unhealthy to do too much reading.
That was to shut my mouth, wasn't it? I wonder why.
I don't understand what you're on about. What is all this stuff about spelling?
Well, either one knows how to spell the word peace or one does not. Mrs. Turl knows, and so do you, I discover. But Wendy? Oh, Drusilla, would you fetch her for me? Now, if she spells peace with 2 E's in the middle...
Yeah, well, even if she does, she's never going to admit to you that she wrote those letters. I mean, why should she?
Well, why shouldn't she? There's no point in hiding it now.
All right, then. She wrote the letters. But you can't pin anything on us. I mean, when did we try and put a squeeze on you? Now, you offered me that check, you know. Your secretary, she's a witness.
Only because I've got better things to do with my time than play cat and mouse with you two. If I had ignored Wendy's threat, you'd have only put the pressure on. What was the next move to be? That you should forge another letter, one from Ada to me.
To you?
Well, it seems quite logical. First the forged letters to Wendy, then a forged letter to me.
It'll be here by the next post, I should think.
Wendy.
Oh, he's not the only one who's tumbled it.
John.
Yeah, he's got it all worked out.
And he didn't even have your spelling to help him. He's getting too good altogether.
At least the letter we sent you spelt all right. We didn't louse that one up.
You've written it already?
Yeah, well, I gave it to a friend of mine to post.
From Harrogate.
Why Harrogate?
Well, it sounded the sort of place that old Ada would have fancied for herself.
Yeah, we invented an old folks home for her there. I forget what we called it.
Poor Mrs. Turl. Haunted in the twilight of her life by memories of unspeakable wickedness. Was that the sort of thing you wrote?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, you know, telling you how Wendy was supposed to have done it and all about the pills.
And the police.
What?
Did it hint about going to the police?
I don't remember.
No, it didn't.
No, that's right.
We were keeping the police for a bit later if necessary.
Pretending you killed someone.
Well, I had you believe in it, didn't I?
You came very close.
You fell for it all along the line. So did the great Mr. Rose. I really had him thinking I did his aunt in. He'd have paid up plenty in the end. He'd have had to.
Well, yes, I might have.
Why not? I've a right to a few £1,000 worth of this lot.
A few thousand.
Yeah, mate, you don't think we'd have left you off the hook for a mere handful of change, do you?
You never had to run errands for dear Aunt Alice, did you? Answering bells, feeding her, washing her, listening to her blooming sermons. You just told me that as long as I behaved myself, I wouldn't be forgotten when the time came. And what did I get? A holy picture. Come on.
Now, just a moment. You can believe this or not, Wendy, just as you like.
If it's from you, I don't.
But since I led you to expect a great deal more from Aunt Alice than she in her wisdom felt inclined to give you, I had intended to make it up to you.
Oh, big deal.
By settling an annuity on you.
Regular Santa Claus.
Doubtless Fred would have considered it a handful of change, but at least you would have got it every year.
How much?
Yeah, how much?
A great deal more in the long run than you meant to squeeze out of me. Now I shall have to look for a more deserving cause.
You mean you were... Oh, don't give me that. You wouldn't have dipped your hand in your pocket for me, a girl like me.
I didn't know what a girl like you was like.
Well, you know now, don't you?
Yes, I do.
I'll pack my things.
I took the liberty, madam. I hope you don't mind. Your hound, sir?
Come on.
Good day, madam. Good day, sir.
It really amuses you to send me up, doesn't it?
I'm sure I never send you up, Drusilla.
The moment you saw how peace was spelt in that letter, you knew Wendy had written it herself. So you knew she hadn't murdered your aunt.
The significance of that particular spelling mistake is only just beginning to dawn on me.
That's a bit slow for you, isn't it?
Painfully.
Afternoon post. I got there some time ago.
How?
Well, I had my suspicions, so I sent up a kite to see if she'd ignore it or try to pull it down. She pulled it down fast.
Well, if only you'd talk a little less metaphorically.
here we are. Now, you remember that letter that you found in the file from Wendy to me, complaining about all the hard work that she had to do for Aunt Alice.
And with only half a dozen words spelt correctly.
One of them being the word peace. She gave me no peace from morning to night.
But if Wendy knew all along how to spell peace...
If she'd spelled it right in that first Ada letter, we might never have known it was Wendy who wrote it.
She can't have wanted us to know.
Certainly she did.
But that was the point of the whole operation, Drusilla, to get found out.
What?
They didn't, in fact, intend to blackmail me at all.
But...
They were merely pretending to.
Come on, doll, snap out of it. It's working. Look, you've got no more troubles now, you know.
He's crafty, old Rose. He's dead crafty.
But it's working like a dream. Look, Rose won't even read the letter. He won't even get past his secretary. She's going to open it up. She's going to recognize the handwriting, right? She's going to see the Harrogate address we planted, the old folks' home. She'll open it up. She'll read the letter saying exactly what we said it was. She'll take one look at it, she'll get hold of it, and she'll chuck it right in the waste paper
Yeah,
basket.
but suppose Ada writes to them again.
She's dying, isn't she? She said so in her last letter to you. So she won't write any more letters. She won't have time, the poor old soul. Now, come on. Let's have a bit of a smile round here, eh? Now, don't worry about that. It's all right.
Good evening. Your landlady said you'd be here, and she told me that you were leaving. You will send us a change of address card, won't you?
What for?
I should hate to lose touch with you both.
Well, the feeling is not mutual.
What have you come here for?
To tell you something quite extraordinary. You know, you said that Harrogate was just the sort of place that Mrs. Turl might have gone to.
Well?
She did. And incredible as it may seem, she really is in an old people's home there.
How do you know?
I had a letter from her by the afternoon post.
Yeah, but that's the one we told you. We said it was on the way.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, but it's not from her, that letter, you know. It's from us.
Really?
Yeah, I can prove it.
How?
Well, by telling you the address we made up for it. No, wait, I remember it. Hathaway Court, right?
Quite right.
Well, there you are, then.
Well, I find myself baffled. Is this really one of your forgeries?
Of course it is.
Yeah.
What else?
Why are you so baffled? It says exactly what we said it would.
Yeah.
Let me read it to you. Dear Mr. Rose, I'm not one to trouble you, as well you know, but I am anxious to see you. I'm seriously ill and feel I cannot meet my maker with something on my mind that I ought to have told you long ago. Yours very respectfully, Ada Turl.
Yeah, well...
But you said that it explained how Wendy murdered my aunt.
Did I?
Doesn't even mention you, Wendy. Doesn't even mention my aunt.
Well, we forget exactly what we wrote.
So why write it? One of your forgeries. If so, I fail to see the point.
Well, it's like what you say, Governor. It was just a coincidence, that. Well, fancy old Ada really going to Harrogate, eh? What about that, then?
What about that, indeed?
Will you be going up there, then?
Yes, we're on our way to King's Cross now to catch the night train. They assured us that we'd be there in time.
That's all right, then.
In time to make arrangements for the funeral.
Funeral?
Ada, poor Ada, passed away last night. So now we shall never find out what it was she thought we ought to know. And you, of course, have no idea, have you, Wendy?
Can't imagine.
So she's popped off, has she? Oh, poor old soul. Well, you know, she was getting on a bit, wasn't she? But I'm very sorry to hear it. Now, Governor, thank you very much for letting Wendy know the news. Now, if you just excuse...
Now, just sit there, traitor, and listen to me. Suppose Mrs. Turl really did believe that Wendy had murdered my aunt.
Oh, that's daft, that is. I mean, why would she? All that stuff about the pills I made up, you know that.
Yes, but suppose you hadn't made it up. Suppose you really did do it. And Mrs. Turl wrote to you to tell you that she knew and that she was going to let me know.
Well, she didn't, did she?
Yes, but suppose she did. What would be the best thing to do? Find some way to make me discredit the letter when it came. Make me believe that all the letters were forgeries, even this one, the real one, from Ada.
Well, that's a lot of supposing, isn't it?
Yes. Ironic, isn't it, that nothing incriminating did come and Ada took her secret to the grave.
Well, if it was like that, I feel pretty relieved if you
All
ask me.
that trouble and all it did was to plant in my mind the idea.
The idea that I killed Miss Alice. Well, nothing you can do about it now the old cow Ada's dead, is there?
No, there's nothing I can do.
Well, that's just that, then.
Especially as it would have made no difference to my aunt however many pills you had given her.
What do you mean?
My aunt relied so much on sedatives that Dr. Richard dare not forbid them, so he prescribed mere placebos instead.
Near what?
Something totally innocuous that my aunt believed were sleeping pills, but were in fact harmless. And such is the power of suggestion that my aunt found them quite as effective. I told you Dr. Richards had no doubt how my aunt died. From pneumonia, that's all.
Hey, so the pills I gave her didn't kill her?
But you didn't think they were harmless, did you? On the contrary.
Yeah, well, you know, what she just said now, it didn't
You
admit nothing.
intended to kill my aunt, and you believed that you had. You are escaping a murder charge more by luck than judgment.
I'm sure she's a very nice girl, once you get to know her.
Yes, you could, in all truth, go so far as to say that, I think.
I've never found any redeeming feature in her, John.
I'm glad to hear you say that, sir. Very glad.